They were joined by Scott Meyer, co-founder of Chip. It's on a mission to make AI less intimidating and more impactful for everyday businesses. Scott, welcome to Just Curious.
It's amazing to be here. Thanks, Stuart.
Who is Scott Meyer and what is Chip?
Oh, Scott Meyer is an active, curious person, which is why I'm on this podcast. It's the perfect name. But I love building, and my whole life I've been helping people learn how to use technology, starting with my first company that taught businesses that they could use social media to sell things, like before Facebook pages even existed, up until today. And that's why Chip became a product. Is I was talking to people in my community teaching people how to use AI. And they said, we want to use this with our team. We want to use it in our business. And that's why Chip exists, is to take something like a ChatGPT and make it accessible for a team, especially a team of people who maybe don't know how to use tech or have private information. And it makes it easy to do that.
What do you say to a business owner who thinks AI is for tech companies and not for me?
Yeah. I mean, I would tell those business owners they probably would have thought the same thing when QuickBooks first came out, right? This is just a new tool. Like, we don't have to use AI to use AI. We need to use AI to reach our goal. And so if you're trying to understand the financials that month, or you're trying to write a better press release, or you're trying to onboard a new employee, you're going to use the best tool to save yourself time, right? And so AI can be that tool that'll get that job done. So AI doesn't need to be the end in itself. Too many people are buying AI because they've been told to buy AI. And what we know is that 95% of companies are reporting that their proof of concepts aren't working. And I think a lot of times it's because they're not aimed at an outcome that they actually are focused on. So yeah, I would tell business owners, if you have a clear goal you're trying to achieve, see if AI can get you there faster in a more scalable way, and then adopt it in those use cases.
Yeah. For people who are not familiar with Chip, tell me a little bit about like how you work with clients. You just spoke to sort of, identifying a problem or a need as a starting point. Tell us a little bit of how you work. I know we're going to walk through a case study, but maybe it's an introduction to you and your work, a little bit
Yeah.
more about kind of how you approach these things.
Yeah. So I think about AI as, it's built on knowledge. And there's really three types of knowledge. There's what I call world knowledge, which is things that ChatGPT knows, right? So it's built in, it's anything that's been on the internet. There's then professional knowledge. So that's the things that your company has access to that you don't put out on the internet. So that might be, your web analytics, that might be your customer list, that might be how you work, your HR documents, things like that. And then there's personal knowledge, which is how I like to do things individually. So I like to have it in bulleted lists, or I like to have quick updates, or I like to work this way or that way. And so what Chip does is it provides a way to build AI tools that's built on top of all of this knowledge. So Chip is an AI or an application layer on top of all the AI models. So you can pick any model you want, whether it's ChatGPT or Anthropic or Gemini, and you can upload this information so that it's giving answers just based on the knowledge that you want. So unlike a ChatGPT that's going to give you, kind of like the generic answers, you can train it on your own information. And so Chip just makes it really easy to build these kind of custom GPTs or these custom chats, and then protect it so that information stays private. It stays grounded, we say, which is like based on the actual information. And it's really easy to use. So, your colleagues or even you might not know that it's actually AI, right? It's just an easy to use tool that is maybe embedded in Slack, connects to your email, it's in WhatsApp, it's on a web page, like wherever you work, Chip can go there.
Awesome. What kind of business are you working with now, and why did they fit the Chip sweet spot?
Yeah. So, I mean, Chip is a kind of a horizontal tool that allows people to build lots of different solutions. But what we see is that different industries really come to Chip. So, essentially, businesses that have like a compliance need are often interested in Chip because we're able to offer them the power of AI without sharing their data. So, that would be things like healthcare and finance and education. We've had a lot of interestingly like membership organizations, which I think is a really interesting use case where you have interesting research or industry knowledge that you want to share, but only with people who are paying for the membership. And so that's a really interesting use case too, where it's not because of compliance, but it's because of a business model that you want to limit who gets that. And then once they are paid or subscribed, they get access to, more information. So Chip provides the platform, and then we have a network of partners, including myself, that will then, build custom apps if people need on top of this kind of AI software.
I assume that most of the people you work with and are talking to are here, they've heard about AI. Some, maybe most, are using ChatGPT, but I don't imagine that most think that there's kind of real ROI and problems that it can solve for them right now. What do you say to that? sort of skepticism?
Yeah. I'd say like right now, people use AI all the time personally. Like the report I just saw this week is 63% of Americans use it multiple times a week, right? But when you talk to businesses, it's less than 10% are saying that they're using AI. And so it's this fascinating moment right now where all the value is an individual, not with the company, right? Like if I leave the company, the way I've been using AI, the workflows, what I've figured out, it walks away with me, right? Because it's not owned by the company. So what I tell businesses is you need to take all this activity that's happening from individual people on your teams and share it, right? Everyone in your team should be able to improve their production. And most likely you already have people on your team who know how to do this, but you don't have a way for them to share it. So I think the best way to start for any company is like have lunch, like literally lunch and learn and ask people, how are you using AI? And that does two things. First of all, it shows that you're open to it, right? Because a lot of people are too scared to either say that they're using it or to actually use it, right? I always say the FOMO is greater than the FOMO, like the fear of messing up is greater than the fear of missing out for a lot of employees. So have lunch so that they feel safe. And then secondly, they can show their colleagues, hey, here's how I'm using it to understand a spreadsheet, right? And most likely they have very similar use cases to the people that sit next to them. And so the CEO, the CTO, the CIO is not going to be the person that's going to say, here's the best way for us to use AI. It's actually the sales rep or the marketing manager or the admin assistant because they are the ones doing the task. And the best way to get good answers is to have good questions. And the people who know how to ask good questions are the people doing the work. So you need to empower those people to use AI. And that's one thing we love about how Chipp's built is that we don't charge per seat and you're trying to figure out who should have access and it's $30 per person. All of a sudden you're like, I don't know if this is worth it. We just have one license for the entire org and you can share all these horizontally across the org. And so it really unlocks innovation like at a grassroots levels, which is how I tell businesses to start.
Yeah. Speaking of unlocking, you've talked about democratizing AI. Why is this moment in time such a tipping point?
Yeah. It's kind of like the whole board game was shaken up and we're all starting at square one. It's like at this moment, you can be a company of five like us and outproduce companies of 50, right? And you think about you have this opportunity right now and people are figuring out how to leverage this technology. And I think if you're willing to explore, like you have an arbitrage opportunity. I also think about it from like a community perspective. You know, I'm in a small town in Fargo, just like the movie. And it's like previously I would have to move to find the talent I need. Right. And now I always say AI is the second best option. Right. Like if I don't have a fantastic back end web developer that I can work with here in town, like I can go ask AI and get pretty far. Right. If I don't have in house counsel, I can go ask some legal questions and get pretty good advice. Same thing with design, same thing with financial analysis. Right. So all of a sudden we kind of raise the floor for everybody. And those who need just a little bit of something can get it without having to wait or hire or, move or whatever it might be. So I think that's exciting. It really gives us a chance to lean into our strengths. I always tell people, we learned it wrong in school. Like we were taught in school to all be at least C in everything. Really, we should be A plus in like one or two things, and then let AI be C in the other things so that we can focus on what we're best at.
Yeah, or maybe even B one day, or
Yeah,
maybe
exactly. Maybe A plus. Who knows?
things are changing quickly. Obviously, the last 3 years have been a blur. In your view, what's changed most about AI in the last year that business leaders need to understand?
That's a great question. I would say they need to understand that if they are not paying for a tool to get the most up-to-date model, they're probably not using AI the way that they should. So a lot of people have tried AI maybe even 6 months ago. Maybe they're on a free plan and the model they used just wasn't in the ballpark. We're talking like exponentially better each kind of family that comes out. And so for those of us who started early on and tried it and said, this isn't what it's cut out to be, like try again with the best model and see how it does. What I find is a lot of people aren't actually using the most up-to-date AI. The other thing is like it's ubiquitous, right? So if you think your employees or your competitors aren't using AI, you're probably wrong, right? People are using it. So that's where I really encourage those conversations is it's one thing to use it. It's another thing to use it well and to share that knowledge. And so I think business leaders need to figure out how do you cut a little bit of time out for people to explore and make them report on it, right? Like it should be a very methodical approach where you can figure out what's going on.
I'd love to walk through an example of using AI. You shared a case study with me of Otter Tail Power Company.
Yeah.
Let's walk through that case study, maybe starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
Who were they and what problem did they come to you with?
Yeah, yeah. I love working with businesses you wouldn't think are leveraging AI, right? So Otter Tail Power is a great example. It's a utility company, right? So they have pipes, they have power plants, they have different things going on. And one of the ways that they engage in their community is they have a foundation where people can apply to get money from the power company, and it's kind of their way to give back to the community, build, morale among employees. The problem was nobody owned it. Like, it was like 20% of 5 people's jobs to like manage this foundation, where like people would apply and one person would manage that, another person would help decide who to give the money to, another would actually distribute the funds. And so it's like we could go end to end with this with AI and really like automate and simplify this. And so what we did is we, walk through the process, literally like think about like squares and lines, right, for each step, and figure out, okay, here's where the nonprofits in the community get information. Here's how they apply. Here's how they get updates about their application. And we basically built an AI solution for each one of those steps. So nonprofits in a community can go ask questions to a chat on their website to learn about the program. They submit their application that goes automatically into AI and helps them improve it before they apply. So the nonprofits actually get like grant writing support. They submit the applications, the AI reads through them and organizes them for all of the ones that they think are like the top 20%. And then a human goes through and picks those. And then they write, the congratulations and the sorry emails back to them. A human cuts the check. So the human in the loop comes in and writes the check. The nonprofits can ask questions of, have you decided yet on AI, which reduces a ton of phone calls into the organization. And then they write kind of testimonials for the nonprofits for the company. So that was a really interesting like end-to-end use case where you have like these little AI pieces and still have humans, picking the grants, cutting the checks, but saved a ton of time. And then what was nice is like that instilled interest company-wide, right? So we're able to teach all of the admin assistants, okay, here's how AI could now help you with other tasks, and they could start to build those internally. So it was a great example of like a proof of concept growing into AI adoption across an organization that, thousands of employees that you wouldn't think is going to be AI first.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the AI solutions
Yeah.
you built and kind of what like stack you used? I think you used
Yeah.
a custom kind of solution with
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah, we built it on Chip. And so, when people like, for example, the nonprofit would apply and they would fill out a form, that form gets pushed automatically through. We use Zapier, it pushes it to a Google Sheet. And then that Google Sheet is dynamically added. It's added to Chip, and Chip dynamically checks it every day. So whenever, a new application is added in, essentially Chip, which is the AI agent, the platform that builds that, it knows that application is there. Then any changes made on that spreadsheet is reflected in the AI answers. And so a nonprofit could go in tomorrow and say, what's the status of my application? It would look at that column on the sheet, give them the answer. When we change it to accepted or denied, like that answer now flows through. And then we can build automation off of it. So we have an external chip chat, we call it, where, nonprofits can ask questions. We also have an internal one. So we say, okay, Scott just got accepted, draft a, congratulatory email. It's going to look at that sheet, pull his company name, his bio, his details, what they applied for, write like a personalized email. And then we say, send that to Gmail. It goes through an automation to Gmail as a draft, and we click send, right? So we kind of use it as that sort of like orchestrator, right? So it's like external to answer questions, internal to create admin tasks. So that was all done basically off of, the user starting the flow of filling out a form, and then everything else is answer based off of that.
And you mentioned that before you started working with Ottertail Power, that no one really owned the
Yeah.
foundation part of the business, that there were a bunch of people kind of contributing a little bit of time, which presumably made it very like inefficient.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about kind of once this solution was live, what was the impact on the organization? What was the after state versus the before
Yeah,
state?
it went from 1 FTE to zero point 0.3, right? So it was like a zero point 0.7 savings, and, still human elements because they want to keep a human touch, and the board still wants to know what they're picking and have those kind of elements. But all of the data shuffling and the huge time suck was inbound calls, emails asking like, how do I apply? What do I need? What's my status? You can imagine people that are hoping to get money are going to bother you a lot to ask if they get money. So being able to automate that. And we've seen the exact same flow done for schools. Like we have a school in Chicago that is using that for all the registration, and part of the appeal there is they have a majority minority population. So a lot of Ukrainian speakers, Polish speakers, Spanish speakers, and they can now have those folks register and ask for questions and status updates with AI, which can speak any language it wants, right? So same sort of thing of like taking a somewhat manual process that creates a lot of inbound distraction for admin and just automating that with an AI chat that is based or grounded on the actual results, like the applications that they've gotten.
Yeah. What was the adoption and change management
Yeah.
exercise like to get people to
Yeah.
use this?
So this is, I know, I think you were going to ask me about challenges of AI. The number one challenge of AI is people management or change management. How do you get people to actually use this stuff and to change their behavior to use it? So one thing I often tell people is score the potential of AI around impact and ease and costs. That could be like money saved or money earned. It could be ease as in number of people you have to train or how hard or easy it is to build, and then how much impact would it actually have. So in this case, it was great because we were talking about, 5 people that were doing a little bit of this job, and we could get it down to one person who just did about the same amount of work. And so we only had to really train one person. And so we basically showed them, here's the form that's going to work the exact same way, but now we're going to put this chat on your website. So people just, when they get the thanks for applying, right in that email, it says to check on your status, click here, right? And so we just had to add that in. So there wasn't a lot of like new information needed. Basically, they just needed to know, send people to these places. So that worked really well because it was a small team. Same thing with the schools. I think the harder adoption, like great example, we have some membership organizations. So imagine, the American Medical Association or people like that. And they want to be able to share information externally, but then they also want to use it internally to work smarter. When you go internal, that's where you need to show people how to use it, right? In each person, there's kind of like a change management piece. So yeah, I often think about AI apps in like a 2x2, which is like you have internal or external AI, and you have one-to-many or one-to-one. So one-to-many is the easiest way to start because you build one AI solution and everyone uses it. So that would be like your chat on the website, right? So ask questions about our pricing. There's really no change management needed, right? Because everyone just goes and talks to it. But if you're now going to take those answers and someone's going to respond to it, now we have a change management internal, right? So we have an AI tool internally that everyone uses maybe as a group or as an individual. So I often warn people about that, right? Like the ease needs to take into account this change management piece. And if you can start with a small team rather than everyone on the company, you're going to have more success to get started.
Yeah. And how does that inform who's involved in this process from the beginning? I think we spoke to the fact that the people doing the jobs are the ones who understand the problems. And if you're
Yeah.
building solutions to a problem, presumably they should be involved at some point early on. Tell me a little bit
hmm
about the involvement of kind of the users of the ultimate solution in the sort of early phases of kind of concepting.
Yeah, yeah. I've done a lot of AI consulting with businesses and helping them adopt. And typically, what I like to do to get people on board is to do that 3 kind of scoring. Have them come up with the tasks they do that they would like to not spend so much time doing, and then score it as like, how painful is this? How easy would it be to automate this? And how much money or impact could it have on the company? And so having them come up with the ideas and then weigh which one to start with is, to me, the best way to get started. So what it often looks like is there's like a C-level or decision maker who says we want to do this, but then the people who are coming up with the concepts are actually the doers, right? And they're not all going to want to do it. So typically start with the ones who are on board or curious, and it's not a job role. It really depends on the person. Like sometimes the admin assistant is the most excited and most willing to try it and have some patience with it. Sometimes it's a technical person, senior, junior. There's not necessarily a trend of who. I think it's more personality driven. But I think you want to get someone internally to be the champion and then have them share and teach through lunches and through horizontal sharing.
Outside of change management, when you think about AI projects that fail, what's usually the
Yeah.
cause?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's kind of this interesting Gartner chart that showed like the sweet spot for AI. And I think it's pretty accurate, which is like, it's either a simple thing that a lot of people do, or it's a hard thing that a few people do. And so I think the when it fails, it sometimes gets off one of those vectors where maybe this is something that doesn't affect a lot of people and it's actually not that hard. So like, sure, I could use AI, but for another minute, I can write an email. And it's like, if you're telling the company, we're going to write faster emails, like that's not exciting enough to really get people to change their behavior. But if you're going to tell everybody, like, hey, you all need to apply for health insurance, or you all have questions about how to do vacation, and now you can just chat into a Slack channel and get answers from our HR doc, like, that's something everyone does. It's not a big change, right? But it can save a lot of time and help people. And then you have the other end, which is like at Ottertail, great example. There was someone who does, has to buy land to put pipes through, and they're going through contracts that go all the way back to the 50s and 60s. Some of them still handwritten, and they have to figure out who owns all these titles and deeds. Like, who do we talk to? How do we get, legal permission? Perfect use of AI, right? And they were spending over 100,000 on consultants to do this. So we can say, hey, this will save you 6 figures and probably 2 months. And I only have to train like 1 or 2 people to do this. Like, this is going to be a lot more impactful and easy. And that's a great one where it's like, hey, let's dump all these PDFs. Let's take pictures of the handwritten, have the AI convert handwritten to digital. And now I can ask questions against a specific lat and longitude to see who owns it. And I can still go back to the doc and confirm, but it saves so much time on, you can imagine flipping through hundreds of PDFs of farmers in North Dakota trying to figure out who owns some little parcel of land. So just an example. So I think, yeah, it fails when you kind of aim low or aim high in the wrong way, right? If that makes sense.
What's a shiny object you see people chasing that rarely delivers real business?
Mm. Total autonomous AI right now, I think, is still a myth. Like, there's so many great demos out there, but when I think about it right now, it's much like the plane leaving LA. And if it's 1 degree too far south, it ends up in DC instead of New York. And that's kind of how it is with AI, right? If you're just going to let it roll, any small amount off the trail, it gets like greater every single step, right? So as you start chaining steps together, it can get really far out. So what I tell people is, that's going to come, it's going to get there. But for now, you want to think about checking in along the way and how you can really be, I think about our CTO at Chip. It's like he has 3 machines all using voice for all of them. And he's telling the AI what to do in the terms of the code, going to the next one, and then coming back to check, along the way. So it's like this constant check in, make sure it's going the right way, and then let it do its thing. So I would be very hesitant to totally turn something over to an agent right now and think about it more as like, what are the steps and which of these could we automate, and then check in, much like the nonprofit foundation we talked about.
Yeah. You've stressed that AI wins often come from simple solutions. What's a tiny AI tweak you've seen have
Yeah.
an outsized impact?
I mean, I mentioned it. It's so silly. Like, the number one thing that gets people excited, that's so easy, is find stuff in my Google Drive or my OneDrive, which often is HR related or workflow related, or I don't know, it could be marketing, right? What did we say in this press release? Have we written a blog post about this thing? It's very simple technically, right? Because you have documents with the facts, and we can tell the AI only look at these documents, and we can then pull out the specific lines and footnote it so you can go back to the doc. So even just being able to say, like, what's our policy about, I don't know, dogs at work or something, we can ask, find it, and we have not had to log into OneDrive or G Drive, which is usually a black hole of information.
Yeah. You often tell leaders to stop overthinking. What's a 1 minute pep talk for someone who's still hesitating?
Yeah. You don't have to go all the way, right? This is not handing the keys to your business to a robot. Like, this is adding QuickBooks instead of doing math with a calculator and pen, right? This is just a better way to do certain tasks. And there's some things that computers are better at, and there's some things that AI is better at. AI is going to be really good at handling unstructured information that isn't necessarily correlated in your brain, but it'll find those correlations or find takeaways. So it's going to be good at things that don't need the same answer every single time, right? Like, it's non-deterministic. It's not going to give you 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, it would do that, but it's not going to give you the same paragraph every time you ask it, right? It has different answers every time. So think about kind of the simple things you can start with. You're not turning your business over. You're really finding better ways to do certain tasks. And I think when people worry, there's definitely going to be job changes, but it's like most jobs are made up of a bundle of tasks. And just some of those tasks are going to change. Just like an accountant's job used to be calculating, and now it's more strategy. And now it's more figuring out which laws to take advantage of for tax benefits. It's still a job, right? And it's a very important job. And I think what's great about AI is that expertise matters more now than ever because anyone can do basic stuff, right? But it's that last 10, 20% that's really going to separate you. And if you know how to ask good questions, you're going to get better answers, right? If I want to create an image that looks like Picasso and I don't know who Picasso is, it's going to be really hard for me to explain that, right? If I want to do some kind of plot graph, of some data and I don't know the words like now to ask for it, I'm not going to be able to get it very easily. But the person who does data visualization or the person who's an artist or an architect, like they're going to know exactly what to say and be able to quickly check if it's good. So I think that's what I would tell them is you have expertise, like let AI tap into that so you can use it more effectively.
You
It's probably more
mentioned
than a minute. Sorry, Stu.
no, I mean, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever
Whatever it
communication
takes.
effective. But, you mentioned that Chip is a horizontal solution, but for people who are listening to this, who should reach out to you?
Yeah.
Are there particular verticals that you're focused on? Are there, company sizes that you're focused on? Who's the
Yeah.
best for Chip?
Yeah. So Chip works best when you have information in lots of places. Like if you're all a Microsoft shop or something like that, like, it's going to be less impactful. But Chip is great because we're agnostic of where your data is. We can pull it in from YouTube and Notion and websites and G Drive and OneDrive and whatever. So it typically is companies who are, 50 employees or less, maybe 50 million in revenue or less, have some compliance needs because they might want private AI, like a finance, healthcare, medical kind of organization. So that's kind of like our end user. And then we have a host of marketers and consultants who build on Chip. So that'd be the other kind of customer segment is people who are going to go use Chip for their customers, and we become the technology they use. So we have a gold partner program, which is essentially marketing agencies and consultants, and they work in industries like construction and urology and churches, right? Not something that we are experts at, but they can take Chip and customize it for that niche, and we can just help them kind of do that better. So would love to hear from people who are builders and want to sell, or people who are in kind of regulated industries looking to use AI in a smart way.
Awesome. Let me ask you lastly, as we come to a close, if a business owner committed just 1 hour this week to starting with AI, how should they spend it?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the first thing you want to do is just start with the best AI model you can. So that could be with Chip, that could be on Claude, that could be an OpenAI, it doesn't matter. And use it as a thinking partner. So think about who is not in the room with you. And that could be like physically, like they're not there because they work remote, or it's 11 p.m. and they're sleeping somewhere. Or it could be that you don't have that skill, right? And ask it to help you think through something you're working on from that perspective. So think about, I'm building a new marketing plan for Chip. I need someone who has financial acumen to help me think through, like, how should I measure ROI of this social media campaign, right? Like, what are the things I'm not considering? Or I could upload my press release or my, 2026 financial strategy and say, from a perspective of a board member of my company, what would be like the critiques, right? Or from a perspective of a designer, like how would I visualize this in a way that's easier to understand? So just start there because I think too often we think about AI as like a write faster email tool, just efficiency instead of a teammate. And I think where I'm finding the biggest value is as a teammate because it doesn't have to be 100% right. Like you ask for advice, you ignore a lot of it, right? But it's helpful to get that advice to help you think through it and decide, okay, what do I actually believe? And so start there because it doesn't even take an hour, right? Like in 10 minutes, you can really have a nice back and forth with someone that isn't in the room and you can tell it to be that person. So be Charlie Munger and critique my business or, be Stu and tell me, how I should think about working in venture capital or in, private equities or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's how I would start.
Scott, I really appreciate your thoughts and perspectives. Thanks for coming on. Just curious.
Amazing. Great to be here.